What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters Live. I'm David Wilson, and we're back with another Friday stream where we get together as a community and talk about whatever topic that I've come up with for the week. And this week is no exception. Hello to the people who are here so far. Sheikh Shakil Akhtar, Amalvedia, Glenn, Marcel, Yele. Nice to see you folks. Thank you so much for being here. So let's see. Oh, I forgot to put something in the show notes, actually, which we'll get to in a second. Hello to Makis, I'm guessing is how you pronounce your name. Boy, it's hot outside, right? I don't know where you're at right now, but at least where I'm at, it's already gotten to about 40 Celsius or like 104, 105 Fahrenheit, depending on which denomination you use. And yeah, it's fun times. This is the kind of week that I wished I was actually going to be. Was going to be in the ocean, like at a beach or something, but it's not in the cards for this week. So YouTube tells me that I'm not sending enough data to stream, but I think it's okay. So let me know if you have any problems with the stream quality or if it starts cutting out. Seems okay so far. I don't know what YouTube's talking about. Hello to Maya or Mia, and to Shibash, Thomas, Krishnanch, Ashraz. Ashraz says, hot outside? First question, what drink would be perfect for that weather? I don't know, it's a good question. Probably a nice cold beer, but I don't know. People here like to have ouzo with ice in it, which is also quite nice. But you know, I'm not necessarily acclimated to the whole ouzo experience. It's good. It's great. Quite high content of alcohol as well. But for me, I typically reach for a nice cold fix beer. Because that's what they have here. It's a good brand. Just regular lager. Hello to Is Bill Gates on Tinder? And I cannot answer that question. I hope the answer is no, though. Hello to Kimmy. Stream good so far. Thank you for letting me know. Yale says, my CPU is colder than the atmosphere in Greece. Probably. All right. Okay, so far the stream seems to be holding up okay. I don't know what is going on with YouTube. I see it fine on my end, so it seems good. Hello to Gun. Just back from Ireland, fresh 20 Celsius there. Yeah, 20 sounds pretty good right now, but I don't know, it's fine. It's supposed to be hot. It's summertime, you know? It's like middle of July. Okay. Updates. Once again, I will remind all of you who might be interested to do so, submit your proposals to EmacsConf 2023. The call for proposal link is here, emacsconf.org/2023/CFP. The page looks like this. And basically, it is asking you, if you're interested, to submit a proposal for anywhere from a 5 to 10 minute to a 20-minute talk about Emacs or anything related to Emacs. And usually these talks are pretty diverse. So if you're interested in giving a talk about how you use Emacs or maybe some interesting package that you want to talk about or maybe something cool that you wrote in Emacs Lisp, that sort of thing, definitely give a thought to submitting a proposal. I've spoken at this event before and it's really fun. So I'm noisy. What does that mean? Sorry, that was distracting. So finishing my train of thought. Anyway, it's worthwhile. So if you want to give a talk at this conference, I think it's great. Hello to Andre. Andre says 13C in Victoria, BC. Ooh. Yeah, 13 is pretty low. But yes, it is 8 a.m. there, so that makes sense. My t-shirt fizzles out in front of the background. Yeah, I need to fix my... my shirt is noisy. Thank you. Everything makes sense. Wow, you're right. It is super bad. Let's see if I can fix that. Let's live debug my green screen settings. Let me see if I can do this really quick without totally destroying everything. Oh, not this one. Discard that. Hey, all right. Filters. Let me just destroy the illusion that you have in front of you. Oh, there's a green screen. Okay. Okay, let me mess with the similarity value a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit better. I can't tell because I can't see myself very big. I'm gonna say That's not great, but better. I need to get off the screen. Come on. I'm waiting for my, there we go. All right. Maybe that's better. It was because of the white background that you could see it so much. Anyway. Yes. Gives me a techno feel. Yeah, that's right. Gun says, wear a green shirt. That would be pretty funny, because I'll be even more of a floating head in that case. All right, sorry. That was a nice little distraction. Hello to Elijah and Edgy. Martin. Theo Peckley. Kimmy. Okay, here we go. Sorry for the delay there. All right, so the other thing I want to mention is I will be on vacation coming up soon. Let me pull up calendar here. If I can type calendar. Calendar. I think starting on the 28th. Up until the 11th. I think I'll be out of town for like 3 Fridays in a row. So 28th, 4th, and 11th. I think probably no streams on July 28th, August 4th, August 11th. But I'll keep you posted. Gonna go do some, swimming and some nice things like that. Gotta make use of the fact that I'm in Greece for the summer. All right, cool. Looks like everything's still working. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I had mentioned a couple months ago that I want to get into writing comprehensive guides, and a few different things have happened recently that have sort of reminded me that I need to get back to that whole process. So, I almost thought about doing a stream today talking about what we would want to put into a guide for like complete Emacs customization. We've talked about it before. I won't go into the details on it, but maybe I'll do that on a stream another time. We've got another week or two before I'm out on vacation. But I think it's going to be really useful to have those. So I just want to put that out there that I want to get back into work on these guides again, because I think that's probably the next direction for how I want to structure content for the channel, but really for the community and the website. So if you're interested in that, definitely hit me up on the Matrix channel, IRC channel, whichever of the two. If you don't know about those, go to systemcrafters.net/community, and there's a chat with us section, and tells you how to join the chat for either IRC or Matrix, and they're bridged. They're not bridged very reliably, but they're bridged. So if you join the IRC chat, at least it should show up in Matrix as well. So that's a good thing. All right, that's that. So today, what I wanted to do is to have just basically a Q&A session. So those of you who are here in the chat, I want to just solicit questions from you. I don't know that I'll have the answers to everything, but there are plenty of people in the chat who also know a lot and can contribute their ideas and knowledge. So just anything related to topics that are relevant to our community, like Emacs, Emacs Lisp, Guix, Guile Scheme, Linux, programs for setting up desktop environments, window managers, anything. Just whatever you have questions about, whatever you've been working on recently that you are thinking about. Maybe I have some input on that. Maybe some people in the chat have input on that. But if you want to ask a question or some questions, it doesn't have to be just one. Go ahead, feel free to start dropping them in the chat, and I'll gather them all here, and then we can start going through them. Gun says no common Lisp. Okay. Does Emacs Window Manager support Wayland? Well, I can answer that one right now. EXWM does not support Wayland, and because it's so directly tied to XCB and X Windows, X11, whatever you want to call it, it will not work with Wayland. So I think there's someone working on a project called EWWM, if it's called that. I think it was this talk at Emacs Conf 2022. Is there a link to it somewhere? There we go. Maybe it's in here somewhere. There's a discussion on Hacker News, my least favorite website in the world. Wait, what? Perma-curious. Let's see, is there actually a site there? There we go. Oh. EWX is apparently is what it's called. I wonder what the status of this is. Is there like a cget instance here? No. I want to just look at the repo. Anyway, let me put that in the show notes. Whoops, forward. How did that happen? Does EXWM work with Wayland? Was it EXM? Is that what it was? Yeah, EWX. EWX. All right, anybody else know anything about that? Okay. So yeah, it would be very nice to have a good Emacs-driven window manager for Wayland. I feel like probably what the design of this thing is, I think that someone told me that they were watching the video and it sounds like what I had in mind, which is effectively to have a program that Emacs can talk to that actually does all of the window management and compositing functionality for Wayland. And then Emacs drives that program through a protocol of some sort. I think that's how this is, yeah, EWP Wayland protocol. So I think that's how this is basically designed. If it works and if it continues to be developed and maintained, it would be great. Otherwise, someone will have to go and make something like this for it to be there in Wayland. Ashra says, maybe have an Etherpad for the Q&A, similar to Emacs Comp. Otherwise, we're going to hear you answer the questions and see you typing the answer. That would be nice. So let's see. Yes, Sama or Same says, make something like Emacs config from scratch like Primogen did for NeoVim. I did it first. I think Primogen ripped me off. I'm just kidding. It's a pretty obvious thing to do for a channel about, you know, focus on a particular editor, so yes. Okay. I don't know, is there an Etherpad thing that anybody can just like go and create an Etherpad? Can I make one here? Or is it going to make me install one? All right, anyway, that's it. Does EXWM work with Wayland? What else? So Tim says Eglot or LSP mode. So I use Eglot, but I've used LSP mode. Obviously, if you've watched videos on this channel, I've explained in streams how to use LSP mode. I prefer Eglot just because it sort of stays out of my way. It does what I need it to do, but it doesn't actually like add a bunch of UI to Emacs. It just sort of integrates better with the built-in Emacs interface and functionality. But LSP mode is probably a lot more featureful and you could say polished. So it really just depends on what you need. Also, if you want to use debugging, so let me write this down. Eglot is more minimal and better integrated with Emacs UI. LSP mode is more featureful, more UI. Also integrates with DAP mode for debugging. So that's one thing that Eglot does not do. It doesn't integrate with DAP mode. DAP mode is basically the companion package to LSP mode for the debug adapter protocol. So if you want to debug your C applications, JavaScript applications, Python applications, etc., so long as there's a debug adapter program for that, the DAP mode can connect to that debug adapter and then give you like breakpoints, evaluation of expressions, all kinds of things like that inside of Emacs. I don't really use that part. I'm more of a just, write some printf statements and figure it out kind of debugger, which is not the best way to debug things in the world. But if you like debuggers, then I would recommend trying out DAP mode at some point. It can be a little bit difficult to set up. I made a video about that, I think for Python debugging, but the same principles apply to other languages. And I think you have to use LSP mode, or at least DAP mode depends on LSP mode. So if debugging is something you want to do, probably you should use LSP mode. But if you want something more minimal, also built in as of Emacs 29, if you want something built in, then Eglot might be the thing that you want to use. Let's see. Sheik says, I'm not a Vim expert, but I like the key bindings. Should I learn more Vim and then move to Emacs Evo mode, or move straight to Emacs and learn along the way? Well, that's a big question. Learn Vim first and use Evil, or learn vanilla. That's a hard one to answer. It depends on what you intend to do. If you really want to dedicate yourself to Emacs, I think that learning Emacs as it is first could be a good approach. If you know that you want to use Vim style editing, modal editing in the Vim style, then learning Vim first could be great, because Vim is good. It's a great editor. And my autosave stuff is breaking again. But and then Evo mode is great, on top of Emacs. So if you like the way of modal editing that Vim provides, then you can get that very easily in Emacs with Evo mode. There's like an ongoing debate for as long as Evo mode has been around about whether you should use Evo mode or not, whether it's better quote unquote to use the normal Emacs built-in key bindings, or just the non-modal way that Emacs key bindings work for editing features. The one thing I can say in favor of using the built-in Emacs key bindings for editing is that it's very uniform across Emacs packages, like things like Control P, Control N, or Alt P and Alt N. These things are, standard navigation key bindings pretty much anywhere in Emacs, any package that you install, and also in other programs that are sort of inspired by or influenced by Emacs, like even Bash. So there is some value to that. However, I don't personally use them because I don't like them. I don't really like the way that the key bindings are laid out. I don't think that they are ergonomic at all. I think that the Vim editing style is more ergonomic, in my opinion, and it just works for me. I've used Vim for a very long time. I use it longer than I used Emacs, or at least before I used Emacs, let's say. So I have a preference for Vim style editing and Evo mode, but that's just me. I think that maybe what you should do is try both and see which one you like better, and then come to your own conclusion. But that's my own opinion on it. So what I would say is use. All right. Hopefully that answers the question. Elijah adds a comment to the Wayland compositor conversation, says the architecture would need to be very different to make Emacs act as a Wayland compositor. Yeah, you definitely need to not have Emacs talking directly to Wayland, I think. I think you want an intermediary that is not going to get blocked on Emacs' own event loop, because the main difference between Wayland and X Windows, X11, Xorg, whatever the right way is to call it, is that a Wayland compositor is literally a compositor. It's drawing the screen. It's in charge of drawing everything. Whereas with Xorg, the X server is taking care of drawing the screen. applications are telling it what to draw, but it's another program that's taking care of everything. Sway, that I'm using right now, it is taking care of rendering everything. So if Emacs hangs, then nothing's going to get rendered. I don't think it's a good thing. All right, so Edgy says, maybe it's too general of a question, but have you ever set up a remote environment config? You'll have to be more specific on that. I'm not sure what that means. Hey, Fade. Theo Peckley says, personally, I don't see any value in having Emacs act as a window manager. Better to just have an IPC. You know, I really enjoyed using EXWM back whenever I used it. There were enough problems I had with it that over time it just felt like it was a liability more than a boon. I would certainly try using a Wayland compositor for Emacs if one was stable enough and seemed like it was going to be maintained. I've thought about writing one at some point, but I don't really know if that's a good use of my time. But it really needs to have stability and a better solution for the possible problems of hanging that EXWM does not have the ability to avoid. So yeah, it's nice to have all of your key bindings sort of be across the board, controlling your whole window management experience. I think there's a lot to say for that. It was pretty nice in Emacs, but it was also flaky, and sometimes my key bindings would not work the way that I expected them to, that would get stuck in certain programs. And then if anything goes wrong, the whole session hangs. And if I'm streaming, and I'm streaming on the same machine as I'm doing the demonstrations, which I used to do, then I have a lot of problems, because then the stream will totally get broken. Don't have the problem anymore because I have 2 computers for streaming now, but yeah, that wasn't fun. All right. Kalayan says, have you heard about Emacs EAF, and what do you think about integrating everything in Emacs? That's a pretty similar idea to EXWM in the sense that, you know, it implies you want to do everything in Emacs. Well, first of all, I haven't used it, but I can see how it'd be useful. I mean, having an embedded browser inside of Emacs could be pretty interesting, like an actual full browser. There's also the X widget feature. Like if you compile Emacs with X widget support, which probably is not something you'd want to do if you're using Wayland. I don't know if it would work with Wayland so well, but definitely if you use Xorg, X11, whatever, the X widget flag for Emacs would be great, because then you can pull in like a WebKit GTK browser inside of Emacs, so that's good. But EAF is able to pull in a lot of more other things. For me, I don't really do much on my computer that's not something that's native to Emacs or in the browser. So what you see right now, where I have Emacs in one workspace and the browser in another workspace, that's basically my everyday existence. I don't have a lot of other programs. If I have other workspaces, typically it's other Emacs frames. So maybe I'll have like a chat frame, which has emit.el and telega.el, which I'll switch to on another workspace. I'll have this workspace, which has whatever I'm working on for code or writing inside of an Emacs frame. I use DRED, I use eShell or vterm. I mean, I don't really use a whole lot of other programs. So the browser is something that I use. I'm using Firefox right now. I would prefer not to be using Firefox, but I need to get back into using Qt Browser or potentially Nix or something else. But, you know, for me, I don't need a whole bunch of other graphical applications really. So I don't have a use for EAF really. So that's really my answer, is like, you know, once you really get into using Emacs more and more, you don't need so much other like real true graphical applications to plug into Emacs. Really, a browser in Emacs would be kind of nice, but I don't really see that it adds a huge amount of value to have a browser in Emacs per se. You can already integrate other browsers with Emacs to the extent that like you could have a button here for you click on it and it calls into Emacs client to do like an org capture or something, to capture a page that you're on, things of that nature. So if you have that kind of integration set up with your browser, then the browser doesn't need to be integrated inside of Emacs. That's just my opinion. Eric Wu says, do you feel that Emacs is slow? No, I don't feel that it's that slow. Let me just write this down. Haven't used it yet, see how it'd be useful. However, I don't personally. Eric says, I see that Dick Mao is creating a fork of Emacs called Commercial Emacs. What are your thoughts on it? Well, I haven't looked into what is happening with Commercial Emacs for a while. Is it actually having changes committed to it? Okay, so there are actually commits happening. And I'm guessing, yeah, so upstream is being merged in. So I think he's keeping up to date with master. Actually, all I see is merges from master at the moment. And that's fine. So the point of this project, I think, is to integrate some of Dick's fixes to Emacs that he wants in Emacs, but have not been accepted for various reasons, if I'm not mistaken. There's some there's a few features. Let's see, perform at long lines without narrowing. I mean, Emacs got its own feature for this at some point recently, so I don't know if it matters anymore that he has his own tree sitter font highlighting. GNU's is rewritten to be non-blocking. Process management is rewritten. There's a lot of stuff here that would probably be useful in actual Emacs. However, I personally would not use this fork because I don't feel that there's enough of a problem with Emacs itself that it would necessitate using that fork. I don't say that it has no purpose, because if some of the effort that goes into that fork turns into upstream contributions that actually can improve Emacs, then it's great, because sometimes you do need a fork to have a clean space to play around with new ideas and not have to worry about whether someone's going to merge them into upstream. So it's a good idea to have a fork to experiment, but you know, I don't really think that Commercial Emacs is going to reach critical mass, especially with a name like Commercial Emacs, because it's immediately going to be confusing to everyone. I know it's a joke, the name, but still, probably could have been called something else. But I don't think Emacs is particularly slow, especially after native comp got merged. That seems to have helped. It may not, you know, it's not a silver bullet. It's not something that is going to make Emacs be perfect, but it is much better after that, in my opinion. Commercial Emacs is a good idea from a clean slate problem-solving standpoint, but probably won't be worthwhile for the average person to use unless it solves a specific problem you have. So that's my thought on that. Amalvedia says, normally when an org room capture buffer pops up, it occupies a selected window and moves what was previously in the selected window to another window, blurring what was there before. Let's see. Org room capture window behavior. When using org room, if I only want the capture buffer to pop up in the selected window and want the rest of my window arrangement to be left alone, how can I accomplish this? Let's talk about display buffer A-list. And Amalveja says, I was not able to figure this out using display buffer A-list. I could get the capture buffer to pop up wherever I wanted, but I could not prevent other windows from being changed. Well, if you make it show up in the current selected window, then it shouldn't change anything else, in theory. However, it depends on what the code inside of org roam capture does. So org roam capture, is that what it was? So let's take a look at the code. I don't know if it does anything extra for window management. Org roam capture, come on. Defun. Come on now. There it is. All right. Okay, so it seems to just call directly into org capture. I don't see anything about window management here. So if we look into the code for org capture, some buffer management, set window configuration. Org capture get return to wconf. What is that all about? I think it's getting a key out of the capture template. Return to wconf. Org capture. Oh, I guess I could do this. Oh, return wconf. Is that return window configuration? Is that what it means? Restore the window configuration before capture. And does it have a default value? Probably false, right? Maybe that's getting stuffed in there somewhere. Okay, here it is. So it saves the current window configuration into this return to wconf key. Delete other windows. That's not cool. Org capture place template. Yeah. I'm not following the chat to see if anybody mentioned anything about this, but yeah. So Ashra says, org roam capture, worst things worst, just temporarily advice org capture with a save window excursion with a round. Uses its own capture templates in the mini buffer. You can define different capture templates of org roam, but the capture occurs in the mini buffer, Gun says. I probably missed something there. Okay. So yeah, it looks like org capture is doing some extra business whenever you try to capture something, which is not cool, in my opinion. So even if you use display buffer A-list, it's going to delete your other windows, as we can see right there. It doesn't give you an option, apparently. Org capture, whoops, capture window, nope. Unless, oh, inhibit wconf store. So there's a, why wouldn't you want to store it? If it's going to delete your window configuration. Org capture place template. Is anybody calling that? Org capture get target. Huh. So this logic gets passed in as the parameter. I don't know what this function is all about for the target. Okay, it may have been stored before, like it's being done nested somehow. So yeah, I don't know if there's a way to stop this, except for, I mean, what you could do also is advice to delete other windows to not delete the windows, and then whenever the capture is done, you could remove it, but that seems pretty hacky. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's a good way to do this. So haven't used org roam in a little while. Capture, yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. That's me first. I think it's because of, am I logged in? I don't think I'm logged in. That's funny. Anyway. Capture, templating system. So doesn't this, well, anyway, I think the answer is that you have to hack org capture for this to work. Org roam capture from breaking window configuration. You have to do one of two things. Boy, I'm getting tired of that auto save thing. Auto save mode. Oops, okay. Is there a global auto save mode? No? Man, it's annoying. One of two things. One is use advice to hack, what was it, delete other windows. And the other thing, what was it? Oh, yes, use save window excursion around any call to org roam capture so that your window configuration is saved and restored. So org capture pretends that this is what it's supposed to do. I think this doesn't actually work though, because I think maybe the problem that Almovadia is having is that whenever they're trying to capture something, they want to see what's in the other windows that they have open. But then as soon as the capture template shows up, it deletes the other windows. So you can't see what was there before. So maybe this is not actually a solution because it doesn't solve the problem of things being cleared out of the way during the capture. So maybe there's just one solution. So you may have to. So if anybody else has any clever ideas on that, please feel free to pipe up in the chat. I'll catch it. Okay, Gun says, does Eglot also need a lot of Node.js stuff? No, Eglot doesn't need any Node.js stuff. I mean, it depends on what language server you're using. So one thing I should mention for Eglot or LSP mode, either of them, is that it needs something called a language server, a separate program from Emacs that is made for the specific language or platform that you're working with. And Eglot or LSP mode will launch that program and communicate to it using a well-known protocol called the language server protocol. That program can be written in whatever language. It can be written in Python, Node.js, JavaScript. It can be written in Rust. It can be written in C. It can be written in anything. So it really just depends on what language server you choose for that. But Eglot inherently does not need any JavaScript or any other language. It's just an Emacs Lisp package. Thomas says, 1 out of 3 questions. Storing org mode files in OneDrive and using multiple computers. Oh, okay, it's 1 out of 3 messages. How do I get Emacs to prompt me to perform a reload when the file has changed outside? So that's an interesting problem. So, reloading changed files from a OneDrive folder. So, or let's say how to. EG NP++, I guess that's Notepad++, throws a reload file alert. So what I use is I use global revert mode. Global revert mode, auto revert mode, that's it. And that will check all open buffers, the files, the underlying files for changes on the file system, and then it will automatically reload them. Typically, Emacs does prompt you, I think, about changes of files. So changed file, let's see, query about changed file. Let's see, where does that come from? If none, no, query the user when revisiting a file that has changed. So Emacs should do that by default. This is turned on by default, but some programs, like OneDrive, might edit files in a way where Emacs can't detect that the file was changed. I don't know that this is actually 100% true, but I've heard about it and I've seen it before in the past where maybe it doesn't update the timestamp of the file correctly whenever the file content gets changed on disk. I don't know like what OneDrive does, but it could be the case that if you set up things like global auto revert mode, or you have that setting turned on, what was it, query about changed file, that Emacs may not be able to detect the change. I'm guessing this is on Windows. So there are reasons why Emacs might not be able to detect file changes. So let's see, Emacs file changes Windows 10, sure. Detect. In general, this should work on Windows, but I don't know if OneDrive does something weird about it. Okay, that's not useful. Resigned. That looks like a Radon. Is that his name? I'm sorry if I say it wrong. Revert without query. Specify which file should be reverted without query. The value is a list of regular expressions. Okay, well that sounds like what global auto revert mode is doing anyway. So hopefully that answers the question. Menacing Mecha, hey Menacing Mecha, says that Eglot also requires basically 0 configuration, which is a huge advantage. Yes, that's one thing I do like about it. I don't have to do anything really. LSP mode also pretty much doesn't require any configuration unless you use a language that's not common enough, I suppose, to already have a binding set up. But typically, Eglot, language, LSP, what is the list? It has a list somewhere. Is that it? Eglot server programs. So it's basically a list that you can edit yourself if you want to add new items, where it's a mapping of lists of mode names to a program to be launched and the arguments of the program. So you can see that they support JavaScript, TypeScript, Rust, CMake files, vimrc. There's a Vim language server. That's hilarious. Python, JSON, JavaScript, Bash, PHP, C++, Camel, OCaml, Ruby, Elm, Mint, Kotlin, Go, R, Dart, Java, Elixir, Ada, nice. Anyway, I'm not gonna read all of them. Point being that many modes are already configured for Eglot, but LSP server. Do I not have LSP mode? I may not actually. Okay, maybe not. Anyway, the point being that LSP mode also has one like that, and it may also be pretty well configured. So both of them don't really require a lot of config, but LSP mode, to get its full functionality, you kind of need to configure things. But I don't know. I prefer Eglot just because it's sort of streamlined from that perspective. Okay, so CAC says, I know you can pin a Geeks channel via Geeks Describe and piping that into a file to pin the dependencies. Do you think Geeks needs a Nix Flakes alternative? So, does Geeks need something like Nix Flakes? Yes, I think Geeks does need something like Nix Flakes. I think it's been discussed a bunch of times. If you don't know what Nix Flakes are, it's basically a single configuration file that can describe a full system configuration, not only for the system itself, but I think also your home manager configuration for Nix, as well as the channel configurations to use for everything. So it's basically like a self-contained one file that can replicate a complete configuration on a machine end to end. I do think Geeks needs that. I would like to write something like that at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But people have discussed it for Geeks before. I just don't think anybody's done it. If maybe somebody has, and they've sent it as a patch to the Geeks Devel mailing list or Geeks patches, but I haven't gone looking for it. But yes, I think Geeks does need something like that. It would be cool to have. If you want to write some scheme code and you want to learn Geeks internals, at least to some degree, and you understand how Nix Flakes works, definitely go and give that a shot, because it could be a fun project. Maki says, are we on our way to Lisp machines in the old school sense? Let me finish this really quick. Yes, it does not exist yet, but someone should write it. Are we headed back to old school Lisp machines? Probably not. That wasn't supposed to be a winky face. Just the shift key lifted beforehand. It would be cool, but I mean, I don't really see it happening unless somebody gets really, really heavy into it and does something that captures people's attention. What I would say, well, so there is someone who is reviving one of the old Lisp machine operating systems. I don't remember what it's called. Let's see. I'm trying to remember the person's name. Let's see, am I logged in? No. Okay. I'm not gonna find it. Let me actually do this. Let me look at my, what? Okay, here we go. Forgot the @. Okay, let me just dig into my own crap a little bit here. Following. There we go. Alfred Schmidt. So he is working on resurrecting a Lisp machine, from what I understand. Yeah, so this is a page where you should go look if you're interested in possibly reviving existing Lisp machines to make them work on present-day hardware, I think. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really looked into it at depth, but I know there's at least a couple people who are interested in reviving the whole Lisp machine concept. But, you know, will we all go use a Lisp machine? I kind of don't think so, but I feel like Emacs is the closest thing you're going to get to a Lisp machine experience, because you have a fully hackable environment that is, you know, mostly configured using Lisp. So it's as good as it's going to get, I think. Okay. Finico says, also Meow and Boon. I think that's back from the evil conversation. Yeah, Meow and Boon are great. Misha says, do you have any experience using Organize for web mobile access to org files? So mobile access to org files. Let's see, there's Organize. There's Orgsly. There's Orgro. Tell me if I'm forgetting any. So I think Organize is a little bit different because it's a web-based app. I didn't realize that it had gotten so far into like being a paid thing. What's the pricing? Oh, okay. Just sponsorship. Cool. I have not used Organize. I know it's been around for a little while, but I have not personally used it. If people have any experience with it in the chat, certainly let me know. What my experience has been with org mobile apps. I've used Orgsly and I've used Orgro briefly. And my opinion is that none of them are really good enough to give you the really important features of org mode, which is like the agenda and better task management. They all can do task management. You can deal with, you know, to-do states and whatnot, but I don't know. Maybe if Organize can do it. Live demo. Let's see. If I click the live demo, will it show me something for the agenda? Okay, so there's agenda functionality. If it does agenda, I'd be pretty impressed. Okay, so that's kind of cool. But I don't know what this is going to look like on a mobile screen if the web-based UI works. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look. Let me click this little button right here. Okay, so this is what it might look like on a mobile screen. Custom user agent, no. But I want it to be, let's say I'm on a S20. Okay. Go away. All right, so if I click on any of these, it expands them. It also has a little menu there, which is kind of nice. Agenda view. It's not bad. It's not bad. That could be sufficient for a person who wanted to have org on the go. But still, like, you know, you can't have all the nice comfort features of org mode. So what I've done personally is I've used Termux to run Emacs in terminal mode effectively to have full org mode functionality. There's also an official Emacs build for Android now, but it's still a little bit rough, and you'll probably need to add some extra customization to make it friendly for use on a phone. And honestly, the best way to do that is to use one of the modal editing packages. I've tried using God mode, Meow, and Evil mode. I think Boon could also be pretty interesting because it sort of enables you to make your own modal states and whatnot. There's other packages like that too, like Modalka and others, but I kind of think that you need a modal experience on mobile in the official Emacs mobile app or in Emacs running in Termux so that it's easier for you to move around and do things you need to do. So I kind of feel like that's where I would prefer to be. I don't really want to use some other app to consume org mode on the phone. I want to use Emacs on the phone. So my effort will probably be in trying to figure out a comfortable way to use the official Emacs build for Android. Let me Where is that? Emacs Android build. I had a link to it at some point. Okay, yeah, F-Droid. That's fine. So this is basically it. I don't think it gets updated very frequently though. Yeah, so added on February 22nd. So it has not been updated in a while. I hope they start updating it more frequently, but this is the link to it. I'll put it in the show notes in case anybody wants to try that. Dominic says, I learned Vim while learning Doom Emacs, and it was a very smooth experience. Yeah, I mean, it can be, for sure. I mean, I prefer it. I tried, which maybe some of you remember, maybe 2 months ago, to kick Evil for a while and try using Meow and also trying to use God mode. And I think I'm just too acclimated to using Evil mode by this point. It's hard to break away from that. Maybe one day, we'll see. Gun says, Evil is for old Vim salts. Others should stick to vanilla. Maybe. A dude named Ruby says, hey, been moving from Spacemacs to my own config with help from your Emacs from Scratch series. Great stuff, and thank you for putting it together. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Glad to hear it. Amalveja asked a very timely question, which was probably like 10 minutes ago. What was your verdict on Meow mode? Let's put that as a question. It's cool. I mean, I think it's interesting to have everything basically be visual mode so that you can see exactly the extent or range of text that will be affected by the editing command you use next. I think it's a cool idea. There's a lot of interesting stuff with it. But I think it can be hard to, what would I call that? Migrate to it from Evil because they do certain things differently, which was my experience. It wasn't impossible. Enough of it is similar enough to Evil that you don't feel completely broken, but it can be a little tough sometimes. I really did like the what would you call that? The region selection bindings for things like paragraphs, functions, etc. Vim also can do this, or let's say Evil can also do this. But I think Meow makes it more obvious that you should use it most of the time. Because I think that the selection logic prompts you for those keys, and with Evil mode, it kind of everything stays out of your way. You're supposed to know what keys to press for certain kinds of ranges or selections or whatever. And if you haven't really studied up on Vim modal key bindings, then you don't really know what you don't know until some other person tells you, hey, have you done this? And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't actually know that that's possible. So there's a lot of things I'm not doing just because I don't really spend the time to learn all the ins and outs of Evil modal editing. You're probably wondering, well, why do you bother using it if you don't use all the functionality of, all the nouns and verbs that Vim or Evil provides? Also because, I like the modal style of editing. I also like HJKL for navigation. I think that makes a whole lot more sense. Menacing Mecha says, in my opinion, the basics of Vim are extremely easy to learn, and then you aren't lost when you go to Emacs Evil mode. The more advanced Vim you learn, the harder to switch will be. Yes, that's probably true. Evil is not a perfect one-to-one translation of Vim into Emacs, so there will be things that are different, and you may have to cope with that. So a dude named Ruby says, any thoughts on getting Tree Sitter to work better? I don't have an opinion on that because I haven't started using Tree Sitter in Emacs yet. I can now because Andrew Tropin did the work to get Tree Sitter built into Emacs and Guix, and also to add a few of the Tree Sitter language packages, but I haven't gotten around to using it yet, so I don't have an answer to that yet. Gun says, the editor wars turns into a civil Emacs war, evil versus vanilla. Yeah, that's kind of true. Let's see. So Yogesh asks, I think that you may have said this before, but I don't interpret it as a question. Maybe it is a question. The question is Guix, Wayland, StumpWM, Emacs works. I suppose you're asking, can you use these things together? There is a, let's see. Can you use StumpWM, Wayland, Emacs, and Guix together? So, what is it called? Stump Mahogany. Yeah, we're not gonna find what I'm looking for there, are we? Window manager. There it is. So there is an offshoot project for StumpWM called Mahogany, which apparently has not been updated in a little while. Maybe it's stable now. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but the idea is that you should be able to use Mahogany for a StumpWM like WM in Wayland. However, is it in Guix? Let's see. Once my Guix package list loads up, Mahogany. No, doesn't seem like it's in Guix yet. Guix packages Mahogany. Yeah, more system crafters. We didn't ask for system crafters. We asked for Mahogany as a package. No. Sorry, I broke the SEO. Okay, this does not seem to be packaged in Guix yet. Someone could do it if they wanted to. But this is probably what you would use. I haven't tried it though. Maybe I said that. Ashra says, what got you into system crafting and therefore into Emacs, etc., etc.? What got you into system crafting, Emacs, free software, etc.? Nice question. Wonder if I should answer that now or later. Trying to see what else I've missed. Okay, let me see. Now I lost my place. I think I missed some questions too. Wow. Okay, all right, I'm back to where I'm supposed to be. All right, so let's answer this question. What got me into system crafting, Emacs, free software, etc.? Well, I mean, I learned about the free software foundation. Well, let's say this. Linux was the start of everything. So I got into Linux back in, I want to say 1996 or 1997. Started using Slackware in 1996 or 1997. And I've basically been a Linux user off and on ever since then. I mean, obviously there's periods of time where you have to use Windows for whatever reason, but you know, using Linux means you're using GNU. So I was already using, you know, free software that far back. But as far as like, well, yeah, as far as Emacs is concerned, I didn't start using Emacs until later. Maybe like, I want to say 2006, briefly. And then in maybe 2013, I started using it much more regularly. And what got me into it, just like finally understanding what you can do with customization in the program. I think maybe org mode was the doorway. And then, you know, learning how customizable it is, maybe you want to stay. And then once I sort of learned the Emacs model a little bit, I started thinking about, okay, well, Emacs seems kind of old and crusty. So maybe we should, you know, make a new editor that takes the inspiration from Emacs and, you know, applies it to other places. And I didn't really do anything with that. I mean, I've probably made a couple of, you know, bad decisions on projects starting something like that in the past a couple times. We're talking years ago. But then I also was using, like, you know, VS Code for work for a while. Then I started working on the Atom team at GitHub for a while. And then I eventually came back to using Emacs full time. And, you know, really starting to appreciate the value of Emacs as it is today without really trying to think about how do you make a new Emacs. I think that Emacs itself has enough utility that you don't necessarily need to make a new one. I know people keep trying. People keep trying to make new Emacs all the time. There's the new one called the Lim out there now, if you haven't seen that yet, which is promising. It seems cool. But, you know, this is going to be something that people keep doing until the end of time. But until someone comes along with the next shiny Emacs experience that is better than Emacs itself, Emacs is always going to be here. So I think the thing that keeps me with Emacs is the fact that it feels dependable forever. And that's because it's, well, two things. Extensible with a Lisp and also free software, which I think is a very important thing. I mean, I was never really a free software purist. A lot of people get really dogmatic about using only free software. And I was never that type of person. I never really thought that everybody should only use free software. You should try to get your computer to use only free software, free firmware, free software drivers, etc. But as time goes on, and I start to see how much that companies force you to stop using the software that they had told you to use 2 years ago, or hardware that you bought 2 years ago or 3 years ago, which now they refuse to give you updates for. Now I'm starting to go over more to the side that, okay, we should not be depending on software that's produced by large companies or even hardware that's produced by large companies unless it can be jailbroken and you can put whatever software you want on it, because you can't really trust them to maintain the things that they sold you effectively. So as time goes on, I'm more and more in the camp of you should use as much free software as possible, except for in the cases where there's practical concern, like you work at a job and you have to use non-free software because that's what they use. Okay, fine, whatever. But on your own personal machine, as much free software as possible. And if you're an Emacs user, it becomes much easier because a lot of the things you want to do with your computer, you can just do in Emacs. You know, file management, using a shell, you know, collaborating on projects with Git repositories, writing code, all kinds of stuff. You know these things. But the point being is, like, you can't really depend on a company to continue to maintain something that you depend on, because their financial incentives change over time, the market changes, or they have to create a new product to refresh that income stream. So they're intentionally obsoleting things because they want you to keep paying them money. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that a company needs to stay alive somehow. But you, the user, you don't have to accept that. You could use something else. So if you have the ability to choose, you can choose free software instead, and then be able to use that software as long as you want. Now, to roll all this back to what that means for this question, I use Emacs because the time that I spend investing in Emacs and even into using Linux and Guix, etc., this is an investment in being able to use my computer long-term, the way that I want to, in a way that my brain instantly knows what to do at any given moment on how to get around, how to work with the types of files that I want to work with, everything. If I were to depend on proprietary programs for that, non-free programs for that, then they may just shut me off at some point with something I'm used to using, and I have to learn a new thing. I don't want to do that. I want to have my own thing. Like, my whole thing is like, I want to craft my own environment, my own workflow for it to work the way that I want, and I don't want anybody to screw with that. So I'm not going to use something that's going to prevent me from doing that if I don't have to. And in most cases, you don't have to. So anyway, that's your spiel on that. So I'm not ever really going to be the guy who's like, hey, everybody should use free software all the time. But I'm going to tell you that you can't trust companies. And if you think about that long enough, then you're going to realize that maybe you shouldn't either. And you should try to use software that at least prioritizes your rights and not the rights of the people who are trying to make the money. Amalveja says, writing an Emacs Wayland compositor would be a good project for Flux Harmonic. Yeah, it would be pretty cool. Flux Harmonic has had to take a hiatus for a while now because, well, I mean, new baby and everything, but there's just too many things going on at the moment. I've got a lot of projects going on that are related to system crafters as well. A lot of things I'm trying to do with Guix, so I don't know. It's difficult. I would like to get back to that though. I miss working on coding or game projects, etc. All right. Fade says Emacs is a bad substrate for the core graphics loop. Yeah, you don't want a single-threaded event loop. I mean, I guess most UI systems are single-threaded event loops, but you don't want Emacs to be the thing that's controlling that event loop necessarily, because it's not asynchronous enough for it to work well long term. Maki says, what's your opinion on Racket? What's your opinion on Racket? It's cool. It's nice that it has so many useful libraries built in. It's great that you can generate standalone executables using Raco. However, I don't like the fact that they're so focused, I don't know what's about the type there, focused on language-oriented programming. I think it's mainly because it's driven by academic folks who like experimenting with languages. It's not, Racket is meant to be practical to some degree, but I think that it is more of an academic slanted project. That could be a mistake in my own interpretation, but if you look at the people who are involved, they're all like PhD professors or researchers, etc. Which I guess you could say that for many of the authors of Scheme implementations, but Racket is not intending to be a Scheme implementation. So it's also not really a Scheme. It's built with Scheme, but they have gone their own direction on certain things, which is fine. I've actually learned quite a lot by reading their documentation for various different things, especially stuff like how they handle syntaxes and whatnot for Scheme itself. But for me, it's not really what I want to use. Like, I want to use a Scheme that's focused on writing practical applications. Many of them aren't really. There are many Scheme applications, implementations. Shea Scheme is one that is, pretty high performance and can be used for practical applications, but the development experience is not great. I think that there's something missing from Shea Scheme as far as like, knowing how to build an application with it. Maybe it's just my fault, but it's great technology regardless of that. And also Racket is now built on top of Shea Scheme. So that's cool. But pretty much every other Scheme I've tried has not really lived up to what I want a Scheme to be, except for Guile. But Guile also has its own reasons why it's not perfect for me. But as far as like a day-to-day Scheme to use, I think that it's the best one. I mean, if you want to learn a scheme, if you want to understand like what's cool about Scheme, Guile Scheme is probably where you should spend your time. There's a lot of cool stuff happening with Guile now, where the current sort of lead developer of Guile is working with the Sprightly Institute, with Christine Limmer-Weber and Dave Thompson and some other folks. I think Robin Templeton, maybe one of the other people there. There's a few other people there. They're all working on compiling Guile Scheme to WebAssembly, which means that you can write Scheme applications that work in the browser or anywhere else where WebAssembly can be executed. So there's this whole idea of WASI, or the WebAssembly System Interface. I think that's what it stands for, where WebAssembly can be effectively I guess you could say bytecode format for applications that could run anywhere, either in the browser or as desktop applications, server applications, etc. So Guile might be becoming a pretty broadly available and applicable scheme pretty soon because of that effort. So I would say if you're interested in schemes, definitely check out Racket. It's not really a scheme. It's got, you know, other stuff that they're doing that kind of muddy the waters a little bit in terms of what a scheme is. But it's cool though, really useful. If you want to try a scheme, try Guile. Guile is not perfect on Windows, but if you use Mac OS or Linux, then it's great. And if you really want to get into Guix, then you kind of have to learn Guile. So it's a reason to get into Guix as well. And yeah, I would just say try Guile. One day I'll have my own scheme, maybe, that you could try, but not happening anytime soon. All right, so Edge Crusher says, your thoughts on Guile Emacs. Do you see it as a future of Emacs or herd tier vaporware? Well, herd is not vaporware because herd actually, you can deploy herd systems today. It's not vaporware. It's a runnable system. You can even deploy herd with Guix. Now, the question is, do you have hardware that herd supports? Well, probably not. I don't really know what you need to run herd on hardware, but that's beside the point. The question is, do I think that Guile Emacs is the future of Emacs? I wish it was, because I like writing Guile. I think Guile's a great language, but I think that there were core problems with Guile's interpretation of Emacs Lisp that made it not one-to-one compatible. So if you were to take all existing Emacs packages today and try to run them in Guile Emacs, then certain things would be broken. And that's kind of the reason why it won't work today. I don't know if that project is still active. Let's see. Is there like a link to... Okay. So this is kind of a good roll-up, I think, of some of the issues, this page. What else? Guile Emacs history. History of the current effort. State of Emacs Lisp on Guile from 2020. That's cool. Yeah, the above repositories have not been touched for 5 years. Anyway, unless a large group of people start working on this in earnest, I don't think it's going to happen. And even if it did, if Guile started executing Emacs Lisp code perfectly so that it was possible to translate things over, there would still be other issues, I think, that would cause bugs for people who wanted to convert. One of the benefits of Emacs is that the maintainers have spent so much effort trying to maintain backwards compatibility for people who've been using Emacs for 40 years or longer that you basically have to throw that backwards compatibility out of the window. So Guile Emacs could never really be merged into the master of Emacs. Like you can't just say we're replacing Emacs with Guile Emacs. So it would have to be a fork, which means that enough people would have to want to use Guile Emacs to keep that project alive. You would have need enough contributors and enough people using it to kind of fuel that cycle of interest that will keep a project going. And we haven't really seen that yet. I would love to see it because I think it'd be really cool if I could write Emacs packages with Guile. I really enjoy writing Guile. I think it's pretty nice. The more I use it, the more I think, I could be pretty happy writing big projects with it. But yeah, I don't think it's vaporware. I just think it's a project that there's too much inertia for it to really succeed, I think. Sort of like the project where people were trying to convert Emacs to Rust. That's a huge project, and they made a lot of progress, but I think that it eventually lost steam because it's extremely difficult to do that. So I don't really know. I think either you need to create a new Emacs from scratch using Guile or using something else, and the understanding would be that this is a new program. We're not trying to migrate things over from the old program. And, the value of that is kind of dubious. Because, when you create a new program, now you have to rewrite everything from scratch to get up to the level of the previous program. Or you have to get enough people interested to maintain Guile Emacs as a fork that stays up to date with GNU Emacs and also provides the functionality people expect from something called Guile Emacs. So I would love to see it. I just don't know that it's going to happen. Let's see. Bongotainment says, I would love a browser to just open ChatGPT. It's cheaper than an API call to OpenAI. Well, you can do that. There's also, okay. I don't know that it's cheaper though. I mean, it depends on how much you use ChatGPT. If you use ChatGPT literally all day long, then paying $20 a month might be cheaper. But if you use ChatGPT for fairly occasionally, then the API is cheaper, I think. And you could use something like ChatGPT Shell Emacs. Pretty cool. Nice project by Zenodium. Alvaro. I forgot Alvaro's last name. Anyway, this is a cool project. If you want to use ChatGPT in Emacs with a sort of ChatGPT-like prompt UI, then ChatGPT Shell is something you use for that. But yeah, I mean, I guess what you're saying is you would like a minimal browser experience in Emacs for using ChatGPT. I would say just, load it up in a minimal browser outside of Emacs, maybe. All right. Fade says, isn't commercial Emacs a product of Dick Mao rage quitting? Well, it sort of is. I mean, the impression I get of Dick Mao is that he, is opinionated and, he knows what he wants out of Emacs. He knows what he wants to accomplish, and the maintainers don't necessarily want to merge his contributions because they probably, cause breaking changes or change fundamental expectations of how certain APIs work in Emacs. So they have to be fairly conservative to make sure they don't break people. This is part of what I was saying before about, Emacs being a stable platform to build on. And, as you continue using it over the years, it shouldn't break down. So if you want to make fundamental changes, things like process management or threading or whatever in Emacs, then the maintainers aren't necessarily going to be super excited to merge those changes. So yes, I guess you could say Dick was probably not very happy that they would not merge some of his changes, so he made a fork, which is a perfectly valid approach. Part of the beauty of free software is that the code is there for you. Like, you can take it and you can change it how you want. And if you're willing to put in the effort to maintain a fork, merge in all the changes from upstream, etc., then it's yours. You can do what you want with it. Seek says, why do you prefer Qt browser to Nix or Nix to Firefox? All right, so, but I think there's a lot of inertia in making this happen. I don't think it will ever replace GNU Emacs. Let's see. Why do I prefer Qt browser or Nix to Firefox? Keyboard-driven navigation, which obviously you can do with Firefox with like tridactyl and stuff, but I've tried those packages and they just don't feel right. Keyboard-driven navigation, better customizability, better or easier integration with external apps, external programs. This thing is going to drive me nuts. More minimal UI, etc. I mean, that's sort of it. Also easier to customize with plain text files, because Firefox is one of those programs that loves to have its own little database files that sit around to store all the crap that they want to store. And you can't check those in the source control. So you have to find some weird hacky way to share your configuration across machines. And this is why they want you to use Firefox Sync or Mozilla Sync or whatever that is, which I suppose is kind of convenient, but I would personally prefer to just check in my text-based configuration to my Git repository and not have to deal with some other service that I have to have an account for, I have to log into, etc. So that's why I prefer Qt browser or Nix to Firefox. No Wayman says the reason is he dumps huge patches with no explanation, refuses to work with the Emacs devel team, and that's referring to the commercial Emacs fork. I've heard that too. I don't have personal experience with it, but I've heard that. Misha says, I'm attempting to live my life in org mode, but I'm looking for some way to access that life when AFK. Is Organize a good way to go for mobile web access? It can be, yes. We talked about that before. I would try it out and see if it works for you. Hello to Emily. Sorry, I'm way behind on the chat now. Let me see how we're gonna catch up to this. Let's see. Amalveja says, check something like org roam, node find, or something like that. Yeah, I must be way behind. Yejin Su says, what is native comp for? I didn't feel the difference on performance after changing to a non-native comp Emacs. Native comp will take your Emacs Lisp packages, and the compilation of Emacs Lisp is done first to bytecode. So it's like an ELC format, .elc files that you may see in your package folders. These are bytecode for the Emacs runtime, effectively. It just makes it easier for Emacs to load and execute the code that you wrote in Emacs Lisp. So it doesn't have to interpret it at runtime. Native comp takes those ELC files, as far as I know, and then uses a package to compile those to native assembly, effectively, on your, or native machine instructions on your computer at the time that they're loaded. So with native comp, what you might find is that you load up Emacs, you load up a bunch of packages, and then you've got all these background processes spinning up, eating up 100% of your CPU, because they're all going and compiling asynchronously in the background all of your Emacs Lisp packages into native code. So the idea is that by compiling those things to native code, they no longer have to be interpreted at the bytecode level, and they should be able to execute more efficiently. Now, does it make a huge difference? Well, probably not enough to say that Emacs Lisp code is now natively compiled, like for real, but it does make a difference. Like for me, as someone who used EXWM, I could tell a big difference, like switching workspaces and doing other things that would normally feel a little bit laggy whenever I depended on the UI to update fast. Now it feels a bit snappier. So I suppose, it depends on how hardcore you are about performance before you think native comp is a major improvement or not. So I don't know. Everybody has their own opinion on it. I think it is a benefit, but it also isn't 100% necessary. You don't have to use native comp if you don't want to, if you don't feel that it's an improvement. Let's see. Query says, is there a way to make vertical completion behave incrementally? I mean, first complete the common part and then let you choose what you want. I mean, that's sort of how it works. So how do you do incremental completion in Vertigo? Well, let's see. I'm using Vertigo right now. I'm gonna load up MetaX. I'm gonna type in KILL because there's a lot of commands with kill in there. So you see that I typed in KILL, and every command with the word kill in it is now here, and now I can just arrow through this list. Or I can keep typing things. I could type WORD, and I see all of the kill word. Now, by default, if you install Vertigo and you use the built-in completion styles of Emacs, it will not work like this. The reason why it works like this for me is because I use another package called orderless. So orderless Emacs. This is a package that does more like fuzzy matching effectively. And if you go basically copy this configuration that they provide, that Omar provides on the repo, then that works well with Vertigo. Like, you don't have to do anything special to make it work with Vertigo. It just works with Vertigo. And you will get better incremental completions sort of just by doing that. So that's what I recommend. Seek says, can I watch anime or read manga easily from Emacs? Well, excuse me. Two packages I will recommend. One is PDF Tools Emacs. I'm guessing your manga is PDFs. I don't know. I don't read manga. I'm not passing a judgment or anything. I'm just saying I don't really, read anything like PDF files in Emacs. So I don't know if what you have is PDF files, but if they're PDF files, try out PDF Tools. And then empv.el. This is a package that's fairly new. I haven't tried it yet. But it provides you with a front end for the MPV video player. Excuse me. Which is... It gives you more of like a video library interface for like files you have on your computer to queue them up into... MPV. I want to try it out because I think it looks pretty cool, but I haven't actually gotten around to it yet. You can even show thumbnails for YouTube videos. So you can do YouTube video search with it. All right. Man, I'm way behind. Fenico says, have you used Nix? Any thoughts compared to Guix? I actually tried Nix way before I tried Guix. I think I tried Nix in 2014, back when Nix was still pretty early on. And it's a great project. I still use it for installing packages sometimes on Guix, things that aren't in Guix, but let's see. Let me put this in. What was the question? Any thoughts on Nix versus Guix? I see this come up fairly frequently. People ask about this. Come on now. I broke it. All right, there we go. For me, the reason why I don't want to use Nix primarily is because it uses its own bespoke language for configuration. And I'm not really a fan of the language. And I prefer using Scheme. Like one of the things that when I use Guix, or when I learned about Guix, one of the things that excited me the most is that you can use Scheme to configure it. Now, at that time, I didn't actually know Scheme, but since it's a Lisp, or a member of the Lisp sort of ecosystem or family of languages, it struck me as like the Linux distribution that would be most like Emacs. So that's why it made me want to try to use Guix. Now, Guix is not as easy to use as Nix because there's a lot of stuff that's not there in the Guix package repository, and also you don't have all the proprietary firmwares and drivers and stuff built in. So it takes extra effort to get started with Guix. And if you watch the videos I have on the channel, you'll see sort of what is involved in trying to get Guix installed on a modern laptop. But for me, Guix gives me way more power, in my opinion, than Nix does to control my system and to produce the kind of configurations that I want. And the reason why is using a real programming language. And also, it's using a language that is really effective for creating domain-specific languages. I would argue that Scheme's syntaxes are better than non-hygienic macros in Common Lisp. Now, it's easier to write non-hygienic macros in Common Lisp or Emacs Lisp using def macro. Well, easier from the perspective that you don't have to think too much about it. You're just using backquoting for the most part to do the macros. But personally, I feel that the way that syntaxes work in Scheme, after you learn how they work, they make more sense and they feel more robust. And you can still do very powerful things with them, depending on which type of syntaxes in Scheme you use. There's syntax rules versus syntax case, etc. We won't get into that. But basically what I'm trying to say is that Guix itself is a very, very good example of what you can do with the power of Scheme. And if you learn how Guix itself works in the code, if you go dig in the code of Guix, understand how the various features work, and you kind of start hacking around in it yourself, then you realize how much power you have as a person using a Linux system. You can do a lot with Guix and a lot of really interesting things. I can't really explain it to you right now because we don't really have time, but I would like to eventually make videos or guide or something that explains like what I've learned about Guix, because I feel like there's way more power there than what you get with Nix. I don't really know about like how robust Nix's language is or how you extend Nix functionality, but I don't think it's anything like Guix. Guix, everything is Scheme. You go into the program of Guix, you're writing Scheme code. Your configuration is Scheme code. Everything is just normal code. It may not look like code if you're like a first-time user and you're looking at an operating system configuration in a file, but it's all Scheme code, and it's all basically using macros effectively, or syntaxes in Scheme. So the point being is that you have a tremendous amount of power. You can build things on top of it. You can build your own abstractions on top of what Guix provides. I've already been doing that in a couple different projects. It's not that hard. And you can simplify Guix to solve your specific problems. Like if you want to use Guix to deploy machines for your company or something, you can do that. Now, you have to learn how to write the code to do that, but you can do that. There's a tremendous potential with what Guix provides that I don't think Nix has. But if you want to get started fast with something that's like Guix and isn't so like free software focused, then Nix is fine. There's nothing wrong with Nix. It's just that for me, Guix makes way more sense. Okay. All right. Sorcerer says, hey, Sorcerer. Richard Stallman has an official account on Mastodon. Is it official? It might be. I mean, it's sort of official. I was surprised to see this. Yeah, the official Mastodon account for Richard Stallman, if you didn't know about that. He's not posting there directly. I think what's happening is that the short posts that are on his website get ported over to this Mastodon account. So I don't think he's sitting on Mastodon posting. I think someone wrote an automation that cross posts. It may actually say that somewhere. Yeah, okay. Anyway, most of the things you see coming through there are politics, because, you know, it's Richard Stallman. He's kind of focused on politics, so. All right. Andre says, Lisp Machine, look at Worse is Better by Richard Gabriel. Yeah, it's been a while since I read that one, I think. Fikri says, do you play games on Guix? I have, but I don't really do PC gaming very often because I don't really have a gaming PC. I will change that at some point in the future, but I don't have a gaming PC right now. I install Steam via Flatpak, and it works quite well. There's also Steam inside of the non-Guix repo. And then there's a Geeks channel called Geeks Games channel. It was called Geeks Gaming Channels. And apparently people are still doing stuff there, so that's good. With some games packaged for Geeks. So go give that a look. Armin says, how about using logseek for that? Yeah, logseek is interesting because it can use org files, but things don't translate perfectly. If you like logseek, I would say just use logseek because it's interesting. It's an interesting program. I used it for a little while, but I didn't stick with it. Sorry, I gotta check something really quick. I'm getting side channel messages from Ashraz. Okay, let's see. Emacs for iOS. I don't know. I don't know if that we'll get one of those. Whoa. Now the chat is resyncing and I'm seeing... Hey, Case. Case showed up, and Case says, ew, gross, chat GPT in my system? You don't have to use it, Case. I know how you feel about it. Finico says, is there a way to preview files by selecting a file on the project or the file picker? Something like Telescope or FZF preview? Yes. Is there a way to preview files in the file picker? Well, it depends on what you use. For me, I use Consult, Emacs Consult. I believe that Consult has a preview function, live preview. So try the Consult package. It has live preview for some selection commands. So it could give you the ability to do live preview of files as you look at them inside of the completion UI, effectively. Also, incrementing a number under the point. I think there should be a command for that, right? If not, there's definitely a package for it, but I don't know what it would be. Yeah, it says, thanks for the supervillain origin story. Oh boy. Now I don't even know what I said. Shabash says, I started using Linux about 2 years ago and learned Emacs about 6 to 8 months in. Found that Emacs to teach the concepts and implementation of programming language objective and directives. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a great way to learn programming. Emacs Lisp is great. Micah or Micha, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Free software as the escape hatch from what Cory Doctorow calls enshittification of platforms. Yes. Yeah, if you want to escape the inevitable decay of the software or the hardware that you use, don't use proprietary platforms. I mean, anybody who's used Twitter has been seeing what's been going on there lately. You know, you have a new owner who comes in and completely trashes the place. That can happen anytime. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings. I've been going through kind of like a dark night of the soul, as you might think of it, recently. Because on the one hand, I've always kind of wanted to have like a software business of some sort. But as time goes on and I start to understand the economics of software and computing and whatnot, what you realize is that when you try to make money off of software, you are incentivized to do things that are not in the best interest of the user. And if you do things that are in the best interest of the user, then you are reducing your ability to make money. So it's a weird situation to be in as someone who would prefer to be spending time working on free software and educating people on free software, but you can't really like make a living by selling anything because there's, you know, ethical problems involved, right? So it's a really weird place to be in. And I kind of hate the fact that I have to make money to live. It makes me resigned basically to stay working for an employer who makes things I don't really care too much about because I have to make a living somehow. But maybe that's the way it's supposed to happen. I don't know. Like maybe you just work for somebody in the daytime and then you do the real stuff that matters outside of work. That's sort of the conclusion I'm coming to in the end. There are some cases where, you know, these two goals can align, I think, but it's not super common. Han says, I don't trust foundations in companies. GTS says, you should give a talk at Libre Planet. I'm actually giving a keynote at Libre Planet next year. DJ Cthulhu says, Emacs as subscription model. The horror. Yes. That does sound pretty bad. Omar says, is it good to use Emacs terminal as I do work on many remote servers? Give me 1 second. Okay, good. Does Emacs work well as a terminal emulator? I'm going to reinterpret the question that you asked. It's okay. ANSI term is probably the best built-in terminal emulator. Otherwise, try vterm, but it is a little bit harder to set up sometimes. To set up due to the native code components. But yes, I use Emacs as my terminal all the time. I don't use an external terminal program. I have Alacrity just in case like something goes really wrong and I need to get to a terminal without Emacs running, but Emacs is my terminal. Andre says, my issue with Racket is that it's not built for scale. The parallelism situation is rough, and there are no hooks for enterprise tools. Yeah, Racket is not meant for quote-unquote real work. That's not really accurate. It's not an accurate statement, but I think it is more of a academic type situation. Fayed says Scheme and eLisp are mismatched. Yeah, they're not. The semantics of Scheme and eLisp are very different. John says Geeks Emacs completely ruins Emacs package management. Thoughts? I disagree. I actually think that managing Emacs packages with Guix makes a lot more reliable. Because you know exactly which set of packages you're getting. And you can lock your dependencies very easily. You know, straight.el says that you can pin all of your Emacs packages, but the thing is, you're not pinning every single Emacs package you use to a specific point in time. Not necessarily, anyway. With Guix, you're getting like whatever the commit hash of the Guix channel is at that moment that you pin it. All the packages are the same version. And in theory, they should all sort of work together fairly well at that moment, in theory. And it's easier to have a reliable, repeatable setup across machines. So in my opinion, if you use Guix, you absolutely should be using Guix to manage your Emacs packages. Now, there are like, you know, weird things that might happen using Guix to manage your Emacs packages. Like you have to have Emacs and the Emacs packages installed in the same profile, but that's sort of like splitting hairs. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Am I speaking in 2.0 speed? Maybe. Han says, does Guix break FHS like Nix OS? Yes. Does Guix violate the file system hierarchy standard? Yes, but you can replicate it when you need to by using Guix shell. What is it? vterm. Guix shell help. Emulate FHS. So Guix shell -f. I don't know if you need to run a container for that also. Maybe it's Guix shell container. But anyway, that will emulate the FHS standard for a particular program that you want to run. So if there's a program that needs to have the file system set up that way, running it in Guix shell like this could be a solution. All right. Odorless Emacs. Interesting. Oh, nov.el. Yes, I should also put that in this list. Nov.el is a package you should consider if you want to read EPUBs. So if the manga comes in EPUB format, then maybe nov.el is the thing you would want. I'm so behind on chat. Sorry, folks. Case says, the real question is, when are you going to write your blog using SXML and SCSS and some Guile to WASM code instead of JavaScript? Well, I don't use JavaScript for my blog at all. I use Emacs Lisp. So if you go to System Crafters, let's see, right here. I do use SXML, dude. Go to System Crafters site, publish.el, look at my templates. It's SXML. I can't speak right now because it's almost 8 o'clock and I'm hungry. But you can see that this is SXML. I'm using the ESXML package. All right, I'm gonna skip to the very, very end of the chat. Okay, cool. Hey, Alex. Proud of me. What are you talking about, man? I'm a Lisp enthusiast. You think I'm gonna be messing around with some JavaScript-based website generator? No way. This is pure org publish right here. That's some org publish goodness. And if you don't like org publish, try Haunt, because Haunt is pretty sweet. Basically write your entire site with Scheme. Like not even, even the content of your pages and posts can be written with Scheme. Let me see if I can find an example of that here. Reference manual, we want the Scribolo, I think, format, a scribe. So if you use the scribe reader for Haunt, even your posts can be written in Scheme, where it's kind of like using SXML a little bit, but this is legitimately evaluatable Scheme form right here. Kay says, I'm writing my own dumb thing with Scheme. Well, you should. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so anyway, that's Haunt. Let's see. Wow, I don't know if you can hear that, but my kid is past her bedtime. Let me see. You should use Scheme to make your website. All right. Last thing. Theo Peckley says, have you thought about replicating your workflow without Emacs as an experiment on a live show? Helix, Kakune instead of Emacs? Yeah, I've thought about that. I don't know if it's enough time on a stream to actually make enough progress to make it interesting. I don't know. There's a lot of things I would like to do on stream, but at the same time, like, I can't really make enough progress, and we're sort of like, we're bumping around on basic crap too much. I don't know how interesting any of it's going to be. Restore Bible Culture says, if I currently use Arch on a MacBook Pro that requires the NVIDIA drivers and don't have any ideological commitment to free software, would there be things I can't do in Guix? Well, I don't know if you can use Guix on an M1 MacBook Pro, but if you use an older MacBook Pro that's still based on Intel architecture, then you should, in theory, be able to install Guix. And for the NVIDIA part of things, the non-Guix repo has NVIDIA drivers. It's not necessarily straightforward to set those up, but you can figure it out if you need to, or maybe you can ask around. Can I use Guix on a MacBook with NVIDIA chipset? Probably, if it's still Intel based. Check out the non-Guix repo for proprietary firmware and drivers, including NVIDIA. Worth trying. I haven't tried installing Guix. Restore Bible Culture says it's older. So yeah, probably you should give it a shot. It might work. I've installed Nix on older MacBooks. And there's another example. I've got 2 MacBooks that I bought probably around 2013 or 2014. And recently I was trying to update one of them to work on a project for someone. And it would not let me update to not even like the most recent version of Mac OS. Like 2 versions before the current version of Mac OS, it would only let me update to that. They stop you from updating to the latest version of the operating system. That seems wrong to me. Maybe there's reasons. Maybe there's like actual technical restraints, but I think it's just to make you buy a new computer. So instead of updating your Mac OS on your MacBook, install Linux, because you can do that. Last question I'm going to answer today. Ashra says, what single recommendation would you tell someone who wants to get into system crafting? If you have not done anything before, install Linux. Preferably something like, Ubuntu is probably one of the easiest ones to get started with, but I'm not thrilled to suggest Ubuntu. Debian may actually be an easier thing to install now. I heard that their latest installer has non-free firmwares baked into it, so the average person might be able to go and boot it on their computer now. Debian might be an option now with the latest release. Linux, Mint, Elementary OS, etc. Just use Linux for a while and try to figure out how to do stuff. And that will eventually lead you to ask more questions that over time bring you to other programs like Emacs, etc. A person could just install and use Emacs and then go from there. Even if you don't use Linux, like if you only use a Mac or Windows, you could use Emacs and sort of start to feel the power of having a fully configurable system within the scope of a program, and then start to realize that maybe you want to control your entire computer like that. Then you would want to go do some more things. Okay. Fade says Debian is great these days. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy right now on Mastodon about the choice of adding non-free firmwares to the Debian installation media. Maybe we should discuss that another time. There's no time to talk about that now. I think it's good and bad for various reasons. Okay, I think that's it. I think that was pretty useful. I mean, there's quite a few questions got asked and answered. Look at that. That's a lot of stuff. Hopefully I took good enough notes on these things, but I'm gonna commit this up so that people can see the list on the website. The link to the show notes is in the description, so you can click that in just a moment and see all the responses to questions here. Maybe we'll do another one of these sometime. I think it went pretty well. I was expecting it to be a disaster because it's kind of a lazy stream idea. However, I do want to thank Gun and Alejandro Barrocio and Ashraz for discussing possible stream ideas with me today in the Matrix chat, because I was thinking for a while about what to talk about. Wasn't really sure, but I think it was pretty good. All right, folks. So thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate your interaction, all the questions. Definitely was a fun stream, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and stay cool if those of you who are in all the hot places right now. And until next time, happy hacking. We'll see you.